Hello and welcome once again to our study in the book of Job. This program is brought to you each week by the Port Huron Church of Christ, located at 756 17th Street, right here in the city of Port Huron. Hey, we're glad you're back. We're hoping, trusting, and praying that you've been reading and that you're all set and ready to lock in and spend some more time in the book of Job. If you recall from last week, Job spoke, then Eliphaz spoke against what Job said, and now Job is going to readdress Eliphaz's comments. And that's kind of like the way the cycle is going to continue to work from this point on. Remember Eliphaz's comments. Job, you've sinned. Well, how do you know I've sinned? I said I'm righteous because it's evident by the things that have taken place in your life. Job, when everything was fine and you were the righteous man that you said you were, you prospered and everything you touched prospered. But now, Job, look at your life. Look at you. You have done something to God, and as a result of it, you have sinned. So that's the message now. And remember, they're not being very kind to Job, and he's going to reply to that right now, and he's going to speak to that. So let's look at Job now, and we're in chapter 6. And Job is going to now respond to Eliphaz. He says, if only my anguish could be weighed and all my misery be placed on the scales, it would surely outweigh the sand of the seas. No wonder my words have been impetuous. What he's trying to get them to understand that, as I said on last week, you're listening to what I'm saying, but you're not understanding the full weight of my affliction. I'm trying to communicate to you how terrible this is on my end of it. And instead of understanding what I'm going through physically, all you can do is condemn the words that come out of my mouth. So now Job is going to try to convince his friends of how he feels and what's going on. And that's what you're going to hear out of him right now. Now, part of this, you'll notice, Job is going to address his friends, and then he's going to turn his attention and begin to address God. Okay, so this is where Job is, and let's pick up here in verse number 4. He said, the arrows of the Almighty are in me. My spirit drinks in their poison. God's terrors are marshaled against me. Oh, that I might have my request, that God would grant what I hope for, that God would be willing to crush me, to let loose his hand and cut off my life. Now, this is a guy speaking, and we have to keep driving this point home, is that this is the guy that would do sacrifices for his kids in the event that they sinned against God. He was righteous. He was blameless. But now, because of his affliction, and it's so great, it has overtaken Job. And Job said, you know, I wish he would just let loose his hand and cut off my life. He said, then, if he would do that, I would still have this consolation. My joy in unrelenting pain is that I had not denied the words of the Holy One. In other words, even in the midst of what I stand in right now, I still have not cursed God to his face. I still have not forsaken him. I still have not turned my back on him. My back is only turned on the suffering that I'm going through, not on God himself. And for that, we have to give Job a lot of credit, because he's going to get into detail again on what he's going through. We looked at a little bit of this a couple of weeks ago, but he's going to talk about this. And as he does so, remember, all it takes is for him to curse God and die. And Satan is watching. Satan is hoping. And by this time, I imagine even he is impressed that Job hasn't relinquished his hold on his love for God and cursed him and died. He said, what strength do I have that I should still hope? Because they were telling him, Job, just go to God and make an appeal. Just talk to God and let him know what's going on and tell him that you're sorry and everything's going to be all right. And he said, wait a minute. He said, look at me. I can barely sit here. Now, one of the things that I want to point out that we're going to find is going to happen to Job is that something's going to happen where Job is going to start out speaking as one that's heavily afflicted, as one that's in tremendous pain and agony, which he is, and one that has literally 1 foot in the grave. But as we go on, these guys have irritated Job so badly and made him so angry that actually we began to see a new energy come out in him, and because now he's defending himself against these guys, and this new energy now is actually one where he's accusing them and he's actually attacking them. So there's a lot going on here, and I want you to watch this and listen for it as we go through this. He says, do I have the strength of stone? Is my flesh bronze? Do I have any power to help myself? He said, look, guys, I can't do anything. I can't move from this spot now that my success has been driven from me. Once there was a time when, before all of this happened, that I could do anything, but now I can do nothing. And then he throws the first dart at them. He said, anyone who withholds kindness from a friend forsakes the fear of the Almighty God. And basically what Job is doing is scolding them for treating him as they have. He had looked for consolation in his trials, and he had a right to expect it, but he says that he has met with just the opposite from these guys. Everything that he had hoped for, he got just the opposite. And now he's getting angry at them for their attacks on him. Let's continue to read. He said in verse 15, he said, but my brothers, and he's talking about the 3, are as undependable as intermittent streams. Now, you say, what in the world does that mean? Just hang on. He's going to explain it and break it down. And it's really a neat analogy. I'm going to paraphrase it now. And basically he was saying is this. When I saw you guys coming, when I saw you walking up to me, my heart was gladdened because my friends were here. You've had that happen before. You see people that you needed. You knew they would understand your situation. They would have compassion on you. They would have sympathy on you, and they would help strengthen you. And Job was elated behind that. But as soon as they started opening their mouth, all of that went away as they began to attack him. And that's what he's saying here. You are as undependable as intermittent streams. And then he talks about these intermittent streams. Listen, as streams that overflow when darkened by thawing ice and swollen with melting snow. He said, now at one time these streams are full of water because of this thawing ice and melting snow. But in verse number 17, they stopped flowing in the dry season, and in the heat vanished from their channels. He said this once vibrant water source has now dried up. He said caravans turn aside from their routes. They go off into the wasteland and perish. The caravans of Tema look for water. The traveling merchants of Sheba look in hope. They are distressed because they have been confident, and then they arrive there only to be disappointed. What are you saying, Job? He said, look, you guys have been nothing but a major letdown to me, a major disappointment. And now in verse 21, he brings it home when he says, now you too have proved to be of no help. You see something dreadful and are afraid. Remember what I said earlier on last week that when they walked up and saw Job, they were terrified at what Job looked like. They had no idea that he would look quite like this. And we've seen people like that. We had an image of what we thought they would look like, and then we look at them and go, woo, what happened to you? Well, that was their reaction. And Job noticed their reaction to him. Imagine, he still feels this. He knows what he looks like, and he watched the terror on their face, and he said, you see something dreadful and are afraid. Now watch what he's going to remind them of. He said, have I ever said, give me something on my behalf? Pay a ransom for me from your wealth? Deliver me from the hand of the enemy. Rescue me from the clutches of the ruthless. Teach me, and I will be quiet. Show me where I have been wrong. You've been making accusations against me, but you haven't yet proven to me that what you're saying about me is true. I've heard what you said, but you've been wrong. He said, how painful are honest words. But what do your arguments prove? Do you mean to correct what I say and treat my desperate words as wind? You would even cast lots for the fatherless and barter away your friend. So now be so kind as to look at me. Would I lie to your face? Again, Job is reminding them. He said, listen, look at my condition. You're going to beat me up in the condition that I'm in, and you call yourself my friends? Really? You're going to do that? And he said, now, be so kind as to look at me. Would I lie to your face? Relent and do not be unjust. Reconsider, for my integrity is at stake. Everything that you have known me to be is all at stake. Listen, guys, my life is unraveling here. And I don't know why, but all I can tell you is I haven't done anything wrong. I don't deserve this. I don't deserve it. And I don't understand why this is. And he says, is there any wickedness on my lips? Can my mouth not discern malice? Have I done any intentional evil with the desire or any ill will? Tell me what I've done. And the answer is, I have done nothing. And then he goes on to say, do not mortals have hard service on earth? Are not their days like those of hired laborers? And we all know that life on earth can be difficult. He said, like a slave longing for the evening shadows, or the hired laborer waiting to be paid. So I have been allotted months of futility, and now nights of misery have been assigned to me. What was once a glorious life, once was a life that I enjoyed, now is full of futility and misery. Now there's a clue here. We talked about how long Job has been suffering, and perhaps he's given us a clue here in verse 3. He says, so I have been allotted months of futility. So we can tell that this isn't just something that's been going on for a few days. This has been going on a long while. And Job is fit to be tied. He said, when I lie down, I think, how long before I get up? The night just drags on, and I toss and turn till dawn. You know, I think we've all been there at one time or another in our life. Something was wrong, and no matter what we did, we could not go to sleep. All we did was stare at the ceiling. And now, what Job is saying, not only is the night dragging on, and he tosses and turns till dawn, but he's doing so in pain. You know, he's saying, if I could only go to sleep, at least I would get relief from my pain that I feel and this agony that's on me. But I can't because of these boils all over my body. There's nowhere. Now listen, crown of his head to the bottom of his feet. Tell me what he can do to get relief. Can he sit? No. Can he stand? No. Can he lie down? No. No matter what he does, the boils get him. And that just shows you how devastating of a job that Satan did on Job. He said, my body, and this is really hard to read, my body is clothed with worms and scabs. My skin is broken and festering. My days are swifter than a weaver's shuttle, and they come to an end without hope. He said, listen, guys, I'm a mess. And I know that it won't be long and I'll be dead. I have to die. I can't go on like this forever. But now they're going to come without hope. He said, remember, O God, that my life is but a breath. My eyes will never see happiness again. Now, this is the guy, as I said, that had everything in life that one could want. And now he's been reduced to a place that he will never see happiness again. Just listen to this. Do you think that we should play with Satan? Do you find him not to be a worthy adversary? Do you think the words of put on the whole armor of God is applicable and important to us because of what we read here in Job? Same guy that tormented him torments us as well. Job goes on, the eye that now sees me will see me no longer. You will look for me, but I will be no more because I'm dead now. And as a cloud vanishes and is gone, so one who goes down to the grave does not return. He will never come to his house again. His place will know him no more. Therefore, I will not keep silent. I will speak out in the anguish of my spirit. I will complain in the bitterness of my soul. Am I the sea or the monster of the deep that you put me under guard? Now there was, the Bible mentioned Leviathan earlier, and it was a mythical sea monster that only the magicians could conjure up. And it was supposedly believed that this sea monster was the keeper of the sea, meaning that there was no other animal that could overthrow this sea monster in water and the behemoth on the land. And he said, am I he that you put me under guard? When I think my bed will comfort me and my couch will ease my complaint, even then you frighten me with dreams and terrify me with visions. So beyond his physical now, beyond his body hurting him and creating this great agony, now he's getting night terrors. And he said, I have these terrible visions now this so that is because of what he just said in verse number 14. He said, I prefer strangling and death rather than this body of mine. I would rather somebody strangle me and kill me than to keep living like this under these conditions. He said, I despise my life. I will not live forever. Let me alone. My days have no meaning. This guy is hurting. He said, what is mankind that you make so much of them, that you keep them so much, that you give them so much attention? He said that you examine them every morning and test them every moment. He's talking to God now. He said, will you never look away from me or let me alone, even for an instant? He thinks that God is doing this to him, and God is just, he has his thumb on Job, and he's crushing Job to nothing. He said, if I have sinned, what have I done to you? You who see everything we do. Why have you made me your target? Job, he hasn't. It wasn't God, Job. It was Satan that did this to you. And he says, have I become a burden to you? You can see how easy it is for Job to make this mistake and feel that God has done this to him. But at the same time, as you listen to him, you see how great was his suffering. He said, why do you not pardon my offenses and forgive my sins? For I will soon lie down in the dust. You will search for me but I will be no more. Now that's his response to Eliphaz. Job is trying to get them to see, he said, as you're trying to sit here and analyze my life and figure out what sin I've committed, what I've done wrong, I'm trying to get you to see from being on this side of these festering sores what life is like for me. And then I complain about it because I ask God, I wish he had cursed the day of my birth so that I wouldn't have to endure this. And then you sit there. My friends, you sit there and antagonize me for my words. You say, what do you think I'm going to do? Whatever breath is left in me, I'm going to complain about this because I didn't do anything to deserve it. I don't know why God is crushing me, but I've done nothing. All I want someone to do is tell me what I have done wrong. And Job's holding on to the fact that he's blameless and still righteous before God, and he doesn't understand. So now Bildad is going to take the center stage, and it's his turn to address Job. Now, if you remember from Bildad, he's the one that's logical in his thoughts, and he believes that Job is being tested to receive a greater reward and leans toward divine providence that insists God is full of wisdom and mercy and claims the righteous have their share of prosperity in this life. He believes that God is supreme. One must acknowledge and submit to that supremacy because of God's wisdom. And he draws and he'll talk about the wonders of creation and the seasons to see the kindness of God. So really what you're going to find from Bildad is that Bildad, where Eliphaz has spent the majority of his time defending the angle of the triangle, the corner of the triangle that says that the just will be blessed and the sinful will be punished. Bildad's going to now come to the defense of God. And so now that he said, God is just, Job, so all that's left in this discussion is you. You must be the problem here because we have proven and we understand this. And actually, Job is going to ultimately come to a place where he's going to see some of their point about the just and the sinful person and how God treats them. And then he's going to slowly turn his attention to God. And you're going to find him constantly asking God to allow him to have a court session with God where he can ask questions and God answers them. Now, he knows how futile that is. He's going to talk about that in a few moments. But that's where he is because he feels that's the only way that he's going to ever find out what God has against him is if there's a mediator between he and God. Job knows. He said, I can't ask God anything. He'll tear me up. He's too awesome. He's too powerful. He's too mighty. I'm just a little man. But if I can get somebody to mediate between us, then maybe I can make my point and present my case to God. So let's hear from Bildad, the Shuhite. And he says, how long? How long will you say such things? Your words are like a blustering wind. Job, you sound like an old windbag, just spouting off words. He said, listen, Job, does God pervert justice? He's giving him some rhetorical no's. Does the Almighty pervert what is right? And the answers to both questions is emphatically no. We all know this. And then he hits Job with this. And this is hard to hear. He said, when your children sinned against him, he gave them over to the penalty of their sin. What are you saying, Bildad? Now remember, Job has lost all 10 of his children. And he's still mourning those children. And this dude sits here and says, Job, your kids are dead because they sinned against God and he took them out. God did this to them. And you can imagine now, even if that was right, would that be the best thing that he could have said to a friend? Again, I say, with friends like this, who needs enemies? And so he's going to argue now. He said, but you, if you will seek God earnestly and plead with the Almighty, if you are really pure and upright as you say, even now he will rouse himself on your behalf and restore you to your prosperous state. We talked about that on last week. And the thing is this, what about the kids? You know, you sat here and made this comment about him killing my kids. And now you're telling me that if I'm righteous like I say, that he'll restore me to my prosperous state, but now I have to live in all my prosperity again, but now without my kids. Not understanding and realizing or even thinking for a moment that what made Job's life rich, what gave Job the ultimate happiness, was not all the stuff, but it was his children. He said, your beginnings will seem humble. So prosperous will your future be. Eventually, he'll bring you right back to where you were. And then, he's a traditionalist. And he's going to rely on that and said, ask the former generation and find out what their ancestors learned. Basically, he's saying, look, Job, we're young. We don't know anything. So we need to ask those that have come before us that know more about God than we do. And if you do that, you will find the things that I say are right, because he relies on everything from tradition. He said, for we were born only yesterday and know nothing, and our days on earth are but a shadow. We just got here. We're still wet behind the ears. He said, will they not instruct you and tell you who they, the older generation? And will they not bring forth words from their understanding? And then he talks about this. He said, can papyrus grow tall where there is no marsh? No. Can reeds thrive without water? Again, the answer is a resounding no. He said, while still growing and uncut, they wither more quickly than grass. Such is the destiny. And here's a point. He's going to hit Job hard with this. Such is the destiny of all who forget God, so perishes the hope of the godless. Job, you messed up right here. You have forgotten about God, and this is why you're in the position you're in. He said, what they trust in is fragile. What they rely on is a spider's web. They lean on the web, but it gives way. They cling to it, but it does not hold. They are like a well-watered plant in the sunshine, spreading its roots over the garden. It entwines its roots around a pile of rocks and looks for a place among the stones. But when it is torn from its spot, that place disowns it and says, I never saw you. Surely its life withers away, and from the soil other plants grow. And then he's coming now down hard on him. He said, surely God does not reject the one who is blameless or strengthen the hands of evildoers. God doesn't do that. And if God doesn't do that, Job, what does that say about you? Apparently, Job, you're not as blameless and righteous as you think because of what has happened to you. And God doesn't do this to the blameless. And he doesn't turn his back on the deeds of the evildoers. He said, yet he will fill your mouth with laughter, and your lips will shout with joy. Your enemies will be clothed in shame, and the tents of the wicked will be no more. Job, if you live right, God will take care of you. Now Job is going to reply back to Bildad. Indeed, I know this is true. But how can mere mortals prove their innocence before God? And that's a good question. You know, I would have thought, honestly, after Bildad had hit Job with some of these left and right punches to the jaw, that Job would have come back a little bit stronger on him. But for whatever reason, he didn't. And I think a lot of it is because some of what Bildad said, Job agreed with. He said, I know it's true. But how can mere mortals prove their innocence before God? Though they wished to dispute with him, they could not answer him one time out of 1,000. How could we ever imagine a moment where we can have a rebuttal conversation with God? It's not going to happen. He said his wisdom is profound. His power is vast. Who has resisted him and come out unscathed? He moves mountains without their knowing it and overturns them in his anger. He shakes the earth from its place and makes its pillars tremble. He speaks to the sun and it does not shine. He seals off the light of the stars. He alone stretches out the heavens and treads on the waves of the sea. He is the maker of the Bear and Orion, the Pleiades and the constellations of the south. He performs wonders that cannot be fathomed, miracles that cannot be counted. When he passes me, I cannot see him. When he goes by, I cannot perceive him. If he snatches away, who can stop him? Who can say to him, what are you doing? God does not restrain his anger. And even the cohorts of Rahab cowered at his feet. Even those that were trying to help others, they found themselves in a moment that they couldn't even help themselves. That's what he's saying here. In verse number 14, how then can I dispute with him? How can I find words to argue with God? Though I were innocent, I could not answer him. I could only plead with my judge for mercy. And even if I summoned him and he responded, I do not believe that he would give me a hearing. You know why? Because he would crush me with a storm and multiply my wounds for no reason. He would not let me catch my breath, but would overwhelm me with misery. If it is a matter of strength, he is mighty. And if it is a matter of justice, who can challenge him? Job is being honest and calling it what it is and saying, listen, I can't plead nothing to this guy. This is God we're talking about. This is the guy that runs the big show. And if he runs the show like that, who am I? But a nothing in his face. He said, even if I were innocent, because of his great wisdom, even if I were innocent, my mouth would condemn me. And if I were blameless, my mouth, would pronounce me guilty. I don't have a chance. He said, although I am blameless, listen, I have no concern for my life. In fact, I despise my own life. It is all the same. That is why I say he destroys both the blameless and the wicked. Now Job is coming to a different place. He never said that before. He destroys both the blameless and the wicked. When a scourge brings sudden death, he mocks the despair of the innocent. When a land falls into the hands of the wicked, he blindfolds its judges. If it is not he, then who is it? He said, look, my days are swifter than a runner. They fly away without a glimpse of joy. He's in pain. This guy is hurting. He said they skim past like boats of papyrus, like eagles swooping down on their prey. If I say I will forget my complaint, I will change my expression and smile, which is what they want him to do. He said, I still dread all my sufferings, for I know you will not hold me innocent. Since I am already found guilty, why should I struggle in vain? Even, and I love this, he said, even if I wash myself with soap and my hands with cleansing powder, you would plunge me into a slime pit, so that my clothes would detest me. He said, it's not a mere mortal like me that I might answer him, that we might confront each other in court. And now he's going to start talking about this court thing. And he's actually referring to our type, what we understand court to be, where there's this mediator. Here he is right here in 33. If only there was someone to mediate between us, someone to bring us together, someone to remove God's rod from me so that his terror would frighten me no more. I need somebody to disarm him so that we can have a discussion of what is going on with me. He said, but who am I to tell God to come to court? And actually, God is going to remind Job that he said this, and he's going to say the same thing to him. Who are you to call me out? Little man, have you forgotten who you're talking to? It's like a kid that spouts off at their parent, and the parent, as they're walking away, they turn around and look at them like they have lost their mind and say, who in the world do you think you're talking to? I'm not one of your playmates. You haven't done that? Okay, it was just me then. So he's telling them, he's saying, if only there was someone to mediate between us, someone to bring us together, someone to remove God's rod from me so that his terror would frighten me no more. Then, he said, then I would speak up without fear of him. But as it stands with me, now I cannot. Now, here comes Zophar. He's going to respond to Job. We're getting through this now, and we still have a few minutes. I think we can make it through Zophar. We have about 6 minutes. Like I said, Zophar is going to be a little bit hard. And Zophar says, are all these words to go unanswered? Is this talker to be vindicated? Will your idle talk reduce others to silence? Will no one rebuke you when you mock? And he's basically coming at him and said, listen, I'm not going to take this stuff off of you, Job. I'm tired of listening to you, and I got some things to say to you. You say to God, my beliefs are flawless, and I am pure in your sight. Oh, how I wish that God would speak, that he would open his lips against you and disclose to you the secrets of wisdom. For true wisdom has two sides. Know this, God has even forgotten some of your sin. So don't think that you're so righteous and so blameless. He said, can you fathom the mysteries of God? Can you probe the limits of the Almighty? They are higher than the heavens above. What can you do? They are deeper than the depths below. What can you know? And these are some of the things that God is going to pose to Job when he talks to Job. In 42:7, he says, their measure is longer than the earth and wider than the sea. If he comes along and confines you in prison and convenes a court, who can oppose him? Surely he recognizes deceivers, and when he sees evil, does he not take note? But the witless can no more become wise than a wild donkey's colt can be born human. Yet, if you devote your heart to him and stretch out your hand to him, if you put away the sin, there it is, that is in your hand, and allow no evil to dwell in your tent, then, free of fault, you will lift up your faith, you will stand firm and without fear. He's telling them the same thing that Eliphaz said. There it is. Job, you sinned. And if you would abandon that and come clean with God, then you'll be able to lift up your face and you will stand firm without fear. You will surely forget your trouble, recalling it only as waters gone by. Life will be brighter than noonday, and darkness will become like morning. Job, he'll restore all your life. All of this that you're going through will be over with. It'll be like a storm that came and it went. And once it's gone and you begin to live life again and life is good, you'll forget all about the storm. He said, you will be secure because there is hope. You will look about you and take your rest in safety. You will lie down with no one to make you afraid, and many will court your favor. He's reminding Job of his former life because that's exactly what it looked like. He said, but the eyes of the wicked will fail, and escape will elude them. Their hope will become a dying gasp. So now Job is going to talk back to him, and this is going to end our class for today. He said, doubtless you are the only people who matter, and wisdom will die with you. You see the strong hit he put on him? He said, yeah, like you guys are the only one that know anything. He said, but I have a mind as well as you. I am not inferior to you. Who does not know all these things? You haven't said anything that I don't know. He said, but listen to this. I have become a laughing stock to my friends, though I called on God, and he answered, a mere laughing stock, though righteous and blameless. Those who are at ease have contempt for misfortune, as the fate of those whose feet are slipping. The tents of marauders are undisturbed, and those who provoke God are secure. Those God has in his hand. Now, when he's saying this, Job is kind of comparing himself to people that do wrong. The tents of the marauder are undisturbed. God doesn't mess with them. He said, but ask the animals, and they will teach you, or the birds in the skies, and they will tell you, or speak to the earth, and it will teach you, or let the fish in the sea inform you. Which of all these do not know that the hand of the Lord has done this? What a big statement, Job. You couldn't be no more wrong if you tried. He said, in his hand is the life of every creature and the breath of all mankind. And that's true. He said, does not the ear test words as the tongue tastes food? Is not wisdom found among the aged? Does not long life bring understanding? To God belong wisdom and power. Counsel and understanding are his. What he tears down cannot be rebuilt. Those he imprisons cannot be released. If he holds back the waters, there is drought. If he lets them loose, they devastate the land. To him belongs strength and insight. Both deceived and deceiver are his. He leads rulers away stripped and makes fools of judges. He takes off the shackles put on by kings and ties a loincloth around their waist. He leads priests away stripped and overthrows officials long established. Listen, nobody is beyond the reach of God, is what Job is saying. Everybody is within God's reach because he rules all of it. He silenced the lips of trusted advisors and takes away the discernment of elders. He pours contempt on nobles and disarms the mighty. He reveals the deep things of darkness and brings utter darkness into the light. He makes nations great and destroys them. He enlarges nations and disperses them. He deprives the leaders of the earth of their reason and makes them wander in a trackless waste. They grope in darkness with no light. He makes them stagger like drunkards. Where are we at? Oh, we've run out of time. We're going to have to pick up right here next week. But we want to just, again, thank you for being with us. This was pretty cool stuff, right? And I want to encourage you again, keep reading and rereading and rereading. And this Job will come to life in your life. And my prayer is that somewhere along the line, you will find yourself in these discussions. And when you do, be willing to allow God to make changes in your life, in your theology, in your way of thinking, in your philosophy, if needed. Because that is when we please God. Not when we make him think like us, but when we think like him. So until next week, we look forward to seeing you next week. We ask that God will continue to bless you, continue to hold you in the palm of his hand. We thank you for joining us. We'll see you right here next week.